Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy pre-Friday to your Friday. My name's Hayden, and I have the honor and privilege to be your moderator today for today's webinar. I'm excited to see how today's topics will not only assist you and your team in taking your SharePoint environment to the next level, but your business as well. So a few things to mention before we jump on in. First, you may have noticed that when you joined, all mics are muted currently. So if you do have any questions or comments during the presentation, we do encourage that you utilize the QA feature in the toolbar above. There, our team will be able to reply to you in real time. Once the webinar concludes, we will be moving into a live Q&A today, which we will then allow users to unmute and ask questions to our team in real time as well. Really quick, for this specific webinar, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to have a little extra time at the end for the live Q&A, and we want to encourage anyone to be able to ask our team any question about SharePoint or the 365 environment, not just the topics discussed today. So be thinking about some questions you'd like to ask, and we will cover on how to do so at the end. Also, our next webinar will be held on May 15th, so go ahead and mark your calendars because we'll have even more topics to cover then. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Michael to give you all a brief message. Over to you, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Hayden. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our clients and any visitors that we have today. Just a brief overview of SharePoint Concierge. As you know, new features are rolled out pretty regularly at Microsoft for that Microsoft 365 stack. And so our goal here about 10 times a year is to show you the new features as they come out or what's about to be coming out, show you some prototypes or examples, give you some kind of business use cases. So you can take that information away and go apply that if needed in your environment. Most of these things are going to be something you'll be able to watch and go do. That's true with the first two topics today. The third topic's a little more technical, but listen up for the business use cases there, because if you might need some help from someone on the IT team, or if you need dataBridge assistant, we're happy to do that. So welcome aboard. And again, I want to highlight if you do have any questions, things that you come up with in the past few weeks, hold those for the end, and we'll see if we can provide some guidance or assistance for you then. Thanks, Hayden.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. We do have a good schedule today, three major topics. The first on our agenda is the new design ideas feature for the Quick Links web part. Coming to SharePoint this month, the design ideas feature will make different suggestions on how to optimize your quick link content. Katie will go over this new feature today to kick us off. We are then discussing the options for organizing links. Finding ways to help end users get to where they need to go in quick and efficient ways is an ongoing art, especially as your company has more and more content to navigate to. So Leona will walk us through some different ways to help you and your team organize your links with a few different options. Lastly, we have Dylan will catch us up to speed with the how to use data flows and Dataverse tables to sync from SharePoint for scalable solutions for Power Apps. Again, Dylan will catch us up to speed on that at the end. As you can see, we do have a lot of ground to cover. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the first topic of the day, new design ideas for quick link web parts, taught by Katie. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Hayden. So as Hayden mentioned, what we're going to be talking about today is the new design ideas for the quick links. If you've been coming to our webinars, you might have seen us talk about the design ideas feature in general, but what's new to it is that it now works on the quick links web part. So let's take a look at how that works. So right here, I just have an empty page. I'm going to go ahead and put it in edit. And we're going to add the quick links web part. So we could hit that little plus sign right there and just go to quick links. Alternatively, you could use the toolbox and add it from the toolbox over on the side here. So what we could do is let's go ahead and just add some links to get us started. So what I'll do is I'll choose from the site and just choose maybe the documents library here, and maybe let's just add a few dummy ones. So we'll just add some photos here. So what you will see over on the right side here, this little red dot next to the design ideas. So this is indicating, hey, we got some ideas for you. So you could go ahead and click that. And as you can see, it's going to show you a bunch of different layouts for that quick links, as well as adding some backgrounds to kind of stylize it a good bit. So you could actually generate even more ideas. So it does give you a ton of different ways you could do it. So you could see what it'll look like if it's in the tiles format, in the grid format, or in the buttons formats, anything right there. So as Hayden mentioned, this is a new feature that is getting rolled out this month. So unfortunately, I can't show you all the functions that it's going to have, because one of the big things that I'm looking forward to is that it's actually going to be smart enough to suggest what icons you might want to use for them. So you might see for the documents, it might give you a document library. See, some of them will give it to you right here. And it might, depending on what you name it as well, it might give you some good suggestions. So if you're getting a little stale on what to do for your quick links, it's a really good way to get some new ideas and make your page look really great. And so that's all for that. Hayden, we're going back to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. You know, we live in a day and age where images and videos speak louder than words on a page. So this feature is very helpful to help jumpstart some creative ideas on how to lead the eyes to what you want them to click on. All right, in the similar vein as the last one that Katie just went over, we have Leona who's going to teach us about different options for organizing all the links within your SharePoint site. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Leona.
All right. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Yep. Today we'll be covering the different methodologies in which you can create navigational elements to allow for users to easily navigate to content or around your site collections. The three big ones we're going to talk about today are the quick links, the hub navigation, and the links list. So to begin off, we're going to go ahead and navigate to our SharePoint site. So quick links, again, Katie kind of touched on this very briefly, but quick links are going to be hyperlinks or buttons that kind of exist on one of your SharePoint pages. This can live on any of your SharePoint pages on your site, and there's going to be additional controls that are available to you with these buttons here. So again, we'll begin off by editing the page. If you do not have a quick links web part on your page, you can add one via the toolbox on the right side of the page, or click at the top of the section at any of the little plus signs and add quick links via that option. If you do not see it here in the frequently used, you can always type in the search box and quickly find it via quick links. Once you have added your quick links web part to your page, you're going to have the property panel be available to you that will allow you to configure your quick links and the options that you have available to you. Let me close this window out. You can also change the aesthetic of your quick links. If you want things to be a little bit more compact, film strip, which is give you maybe a larger imagery that kind of direct your users, grid. There's also buttons, list, and then also tiles. So you can kind of play around aesthetically with how these buttons look, again, based off your layout of your page. Some of these things might look better based off of how many number of links you have on your page. Again, to add these links, you just click the little add link button here. The very first one will kind of show you recently uploaded content to your site. So if there is a document that has been recently uploaded, you can quickly kind of grab it from here. You can also pull stock images. For having a hyperlink, stock images is probably irrelevant because in essence, it takes you to a Bing kind of sort image library. Your organization, if there is any content with any organization from an asset standpoint, you can do that here. Your personal OneDrive, again, this probably is not too practical unless you have your own private page you wish to use. Content that lives on your site somewhere. uploading the document, which you can upload from your machine, which when you do this, it will upload it to the site assets library underneath a folder with that name. And then lastly is if you have a hyperlink to an object, you can go ahead and paste in the URL here. So again, if there's a direct URL that you have of a document, you can drop that in here. There's content that maybe is externally housed on other websites or applications. You might be able to use this as a means to do so. Once you have created your quick links, again, if you ever need to make any sort of modifications to them, you can edit each of the individual quick links manually by clicking the little quick link itself, which this menu will pop up. You have the edit option, which the panel on the right side will update, allowing you to change the hyperlink, the methodology if it opens in a new tab, the display text, what type of image is it going to be? Is it auto-selected based off the object it originated from? Is it a custom image in which you upload your own file? Or does it come from the library in which Microsoft has a plethora of different images available to you? So you can kind of play around with these different options here if you so desire. And again, you can kind of adjust these accordingly. Now, these do live specifically on pages, which means that, again, if by chance this web part is ever deleted, those links disappear. The content that those links are directing to still stay around. They're just hyperlinks at the end of the day. So again, if you wish to play around with this on pages, this is an easy, simple, straightforward, and intuitive way to create links on pages. Next method we're going to talk about is going to be the hub navigation. What a hub navigation is, once you register a site as a hub, which you can do so via the SharePoint admin portal, you select one of your site collections, and inside the admin portal, there is an option to register as a hub. Once a site has been registered as a hub, a new navigational element will pop up at the very top of the page that we can see right here between the webinar comms text and the SharePoint text in the search box. This navigation right here is your hub navigation. It works just like any of your other navigations on your site in the means of editing it. If you click this little edit button, if you have the rights to do so, you get a little menu that pops up that allows you to make modifications to these links here. Again, if you ever wish to manage this, you can always add new hyperlinks by clicking this little add button here. You can either make a link, associated hubs, child hubs, and label. The ones I would really suggest probably ever using are going to be link and label. These other two are going to be based off of hub registration, which I'll kind of briefly cover here in a minute, but they're kind of a one-time snapshot of what sites are currently inheriting from that hub. Labels are meant to be more of a categorization control to say, hey, I want this to be a descriptor, and then underneath of that descriptor, they're going to be hyperlinks there. You can also use potentially labels as placeholders while you're doing some level of development, so you don't have to have it linked to a page or an object if by chance it does not exist yet. So again, with links and labels, these are going to be the ways that you can create additional hyperlinks in your navigation. As we can kind of see here, we have a lot of different hyperlinks. Also with the hub navigation, we kind of get a mega menu-esque control, which allows you to have hierarchical navigation, which means that at the very top level, we can see here in our example right now, we have site contents, webinar, links list. And so here with links, we can see that, hey, we have an additional header and can categorize our hyperlinks based off those headers, allowing you to have a little bit more control over how you want to navigate around your sites inside SharePoint Online. There is also an additional control at the very bottom, which allows you to do site or audience targeting. For those who are unaware of what audience targeting does, it gives you an extra control on your links to say who should be able to see this object. This is not a permissions piece. This is a show and hide piece. So again, if you have a direct link to the object this is linking to, you still have access to that object. It just makes it hidden from the navigation if you are not within the group that is targeted here. This also uses only groups, so you can't target individual users. You will have to put that individual user into a group for them to see that. Another nice thing to also be aware of, if you target a parent object, so let's say we target links, we don't want this whole tab right here to be visible to some group of users, you can target the parent and everything underneath of that will also inherit it. So in essence, if I was to target the links and I hit the save button, this links button will disappear for users who are not being targeted by that audience targeting control. Now, once you configured your navigation, fantastic, but there's additional value to be had from the hub navigation, which is any sites that are currently registered to the hub will also inherit this navigation. So this can be a great way to create a centralized location for your organization's top navigation. So you can, no matter where you are inside of your tenant, you can easily jump from site collection to site collection via this one UI element. That concludes that section. The last one will be the idea of creating a links list. So these two methods that we kind of covered so far are probably a little bit more small scale, where, hey, you know what, links, quick links, maybe a dozen links or maybe 24 links. That starts getting a little bit overwhelming for the user base and maybe takes up far too much real estate. The top navigation, again, there's only so much horizontal real estate that also exists there, and potentially vertical before it becomes too overwhelming to the eyes. So the links list will probably be the last method, which would be you creating a SharePoint list, and then you creating additional metadata columns to fit your needs. This will allow you to create as many kind of row items as you want, again, presumably within the realm of SharePoint list limitations, which is a couple million records. So you can have a couple million hyperlinks in this list. You can go ahead and create the additional columns like what we did here for the URL. I click this little add column button here. I choose a hyperlink field, which is down here. I click the next button, give it a name. Now I have a URL column. With this, you can also create additional taxonomy. So if you say, hey, there are going to be hyperlinks that are related to specific departments or concepts or categories, you can create additional metadata columns to allow for easy filtering and sorting your content to your needs. So if I say, hey, I need to find any of our document or any of our hyperlinks that are going to be related to finance. Let me see if this little filter panel will ever load up. There it goes. So I say, I need to find finance links. I can easily click the finance button. If my SharePoint wants to catch up to me today, let's try it again. Seems to be running a little bit slow for me, but in essence, let me do one more refresh to see if this resolves itself. So we can see here, if you select any of your filter categories, which again, filter is going to be based off the metadata that you have available, you can easily see and sort and filter your data based off what you're looking for. So again, you could have hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of hyperlinks live in a singular repository, allow for filtering. You can also search off this database table as well once it has been indexed, which allows you to say, hey, I'm looking for ADP. This can be a hyperlink that pops up into your search no matter where you are, and you can quickly find the hyperlink to this object. So again, this is going to be the kind of the three primary methods that SharePoint has to offer. There are going to be also additional methods, but these are probably the ones that we see most of our clients using to start off with. So with all that being said, Hayden, I'll pass it back on to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Leona. As previously stated, optimizing navigation is a true art form. And links that may have worked as maybe just hyperlinks as text on a page in the past may be best served in a different way today, and same with quick links and hub level navigation. Our hopes are that by hearing the different options today that Leona reviewed, as well as the soon to roll out design ideas for quick links that Katie just taught on, that you have a better idea of what navigation will work best for you and your organization. A couple of quick use cases that I've seen be very beneficial, especially with the hub level navigation, is those don't only have to take you to sites, but they can take you to specific content as well. So if you have a lot of employee resources or maybe forms that you need to quickly get to, no matter which SharePoint site you're on, having something on a hub level navigation seems to work really well. Now, we've talked a lot about content and how to get to that content, but let's dive into data and how to optimize it with our next section being the use of data flows and Dataverse tables to sync from SharePoint for scalable solutions for Power Apps, which is taught by Dylan. Over to you, Dylan.
Hey everyone, yeah, let me go ahead and switch over the screen here. And yeah, so in today's presentation, we'll learn about using data flows and Dataverse tables as a solution for working with large amounts of data that are coming from SharePoint and Power Apps. So a little bit technical here, but really, I've seen this come up with some clients and even for myself. And it's where, you've got maybe a nice form or dashboard in Power Apps. And you're pulling data from SharePoint. So for instance, you might have something like a purchase order form, or you can search by part number, or part description, something like that, or contract requests. So you've got these different drop downs or maybe a search box. or you're pulling in things like approvals where you're contained in the assigned to. So you've got these different kind of either forms or dashboards that are pulling in a bunch of data from SharePoint. But something that you may run into or have seen before is if you're starting to miss results and things of that nature as it becomes scalable. So today, what we're going to show is a way that you can actually make that scalable by taking advantage of data flows in Dataverse tables, where maybe you've got thousands of items, in your, part list, or in your whatever it may be ticketing system that you wanted to have in rolled up in Power Apps. So we'll show a way to make it scalable to those thousands of items, potentially, depending on what you're trying to do, of course. And help to mitigate some of those issues you can experience, which can be things like all of a sudden you're missing results, or it's just the performance issues where it's taking a long time to load, or even in the worst case, you get some kind of the app actually throws and you get some kind of error, throttle limit message, something like that. So that's what we'll go into today. But I'll just define a couple of terms real quick. So the first one here, Dataverse tables. So in as it pertains to Power Apps, once you get either you can get like the free developer license, or if you have a paid Power Apps license. So if you have one of those two, you probably have seen the tables feature, which it gives you access to Dataverse tables. So it's just another way to manage data, similar to like SharePoint lists, but the Dataverse tables become available to you in Power Platform, once you're on one of these sort of paid licenses, or you have that developer license. So it's another way to manage data, which works really nice for Power Apps. And so if I'll just move down the list here. So delegation. So delegation, you may have seen a delegation warning in your Power Apps if you've ever used it, but something that's in terms of Power Apps, when it's a delegable versus non-delegable, it means, if it's delegable, that means that, whatever query you're doing, all the heavy lifting, the whole operation is happening on the data source, or it's happening on the server. So it's not taxing the user's browser that's got the app open. That's being delegated to the server, wherever that data source is coming from. Whereas a non-delegable query means it's something that can't be just delegated to that query. Maybe it's a very complex filter. So actually what's happening, and you see that delegation warning in your app, it means that, well, actually the query might just be going to get everything, returning everything, and then processing it locally, doing the heavy lifting in the person's browser inside the app. And when it's non-delegable, by default, the row limit is set to 500, which you can increase to 2000. If you've worked with Power Apps, you've probably seen that, where you increase that row limit. But of course, you can start to deal with those performance issues and things of that nature, incomplete data, where you're filtering it, but because that filter is not actually being sent to the data source, you're actually could be missing some of the results you're expecting. And then just the third one here, data flows, which we're going to go over. So it is an automation solution it's specific for what we're talking about. So where you could use always Power Automate flows for something, maybe for integrating something, or whatever it may be you use that for. Data flows is a more specific automation tool that's really just for syncing data to the Dataverse tables. So that's what we'll go over and show how you can just sync data from SharePoint list into a Dataverse table. So, one approach, you can migrate data to the Dataverse table very easily, but also if you want to just continue for everything to continue as is, where the user can keep using that SharePoint list, you could use what's called a data flow just to make that sync. And data flows can be used for other stuff as well, for syncing other data. So we'll go over that a little bit as well. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be bringing over on the screen. We'll just walk through some of this stuff and how you can set it up. And one thing just to keep in mind here, of course, this solution that we're talking about is really, I would say, for people that have already maybe tried the different strategies, for making their large amount of SharePoint data work within their Power Apps, which means you may have already tried indexing your SharePoint columns. You may have looked into delegable functions. There's even a link, if someone needs it, there's a little documentation that shows about the different ways you can create delegated, functions or, queries in Power Apps for SharePoint specifically. And then also, you've maybe already tried increasing that limit from 500 to 2000 and that row limit that's in the Power App settings. So this is made for people that have already tried some of the different strategies, and now you're looking to create something that's even more scalable and more flexible. So what I'm going to pull on the screen is just a little Power App example here. So I've got it open here. Let me just open it up a little bit. And what I want to show first is so that delegation warning. So for instance, in my Power Apps, I've got some different drop downs here. These are just different versions of the location drop down, but some of them are delegated and some of them aren't. So I can see here, I get a delegation warning here. So it says the search part of this formula may not work correctly on large data sets. So what it's saying is I'm not doing some kind of delegated query. So, once you're working with a large amount of data, you may actually start to get performance issues or get missing data, things like that, once that data grows. So just to show you, I could say the formula, it's not showing it. Let me just switch over. I'll show you where the delegated. So for instance, in my little drop down here, I know this is technical. I try not to go down this rabbit hole too much here, but just to show, I've got a drop down right now. It's just set to my SharePoint list locations. And I've also got another example here where it's saying where the locations contain China, or it could say, contain whatever. So these two wouldn't be delegated for SharePoint because of the nature of the way the query works, because we're just returning everything essentially. And then including for I'll show you real quick. So for instance, when I change it to this, where it's a value that's contained in the title. If I hover over the in, it actually says, that I'm getting a delegation warning because I'm using this method in, which just means that it's, my value is contained in the title. So because of that, that means it may not work on large data sets. Because it's going to have to actually go query all the data, return it, and then, filter out the values as needed according to this. So that's something to, keep in mind when working with SharePoint is, well, can we change this? Can we make a compromise to use a delegated function if it's, you're having to filter down on thousands of records? But of course, if we were to switch over to something like a dataverse table, just to show you real quick, I've got an example here where I've actually got a filter where I've actually got a view set up in my dataverse table that's set to the Brazil locations. So that's actually delegable. That's not an issue there. And then I've also got that same filter where China is contained in the title of the location. And this one is delegated because this is actually looking to my dataverse table. So that same type of function or expression for SharePoint, which is non-delegated, is delegable for a dataverse table. So there's more flexibility in what I could do on the dataverse table in terms of filtering and searching that data source as it is in the SharePoint list. Now, of course, that, that's, you may say, well, that's great. Maybe I'll just try it out. But something to keep in mind, and I'll try to iterate it at the end too, is that this, this does require additional licensing, paid costs. So that is where you have to kind of count, is it worth going down this approach? Have you already exhausted your other methods with the SharePoint data that's hosted there to go down this route of maybe an additional cost? But if it's an important business function, this may, of course, be on the table. But you can see, there's a lot more flexibility with the different ways that you could filter or search and things like that, and delegate that to, essentially the server to handle that request. And then I'll just show the other one, which is another common approach. Maybe you have a search box. So just to show these, I've got a search box here. So I could say, as I search for one of the locations, I can actually say where it's contained in the title. This is delegated this would be delegated if this was looking to my dataverse table. But since it's looking to SharePoint, I get that delegation warning because I'm using where my search input is contained in the title. So I searched the word Tecate, so it's, that worked. It worked because I don't have a couple thousand records in this location list, but, there's a possibility that that would not work, once it's scaled up to a lot of records. But I do show alternatively, I've got it commented out, one compromise you can make, if you're trying to use the strategies of making that SharePoint data work with just a data hosted in SharePoint is, well, I could change this filter to be starts with. So where my search input, whatever I enter, if I know what the location starts with, I could use that approach. So it's not going to be quite as nice for the end user, but that could be the compromise where, okay, we can work with that. User just got to know when they're searching with, it's a starts with, not just. So in my case, instead of for city of industry Tecate, I would have to search the word city first, or city of. So that would be the trade-off to make it delegable to SharePoint essentially. So just something to keep in mind there. But of course, yeah, if we use the dataverse table, it would be delegated. So now I'll go over just to show what that looks like in terms of setting it up if you wanted to try this out, and where you could make the potentially something that's more scalable in dataverse tables, and then also syncing that data if you want to continue to also use the SharePoint list or library. So I'll come over. Let's just say you're in the Power Apps portal. I'll click home here. So if you have the developer license or one of the paid Power Apps licenses, you'll probably see tables as well as data flows. If you don't see them directly in the tab, you could hit the more and see if it's here. So you may not see it if you don't have if you don't have that needed license, but these two options, tables and data flows, is what we'll just try to go over just a little bit, just to show first how easy it is to migrate that SharePoint data into a table, and then as well as syncing the data ongoing. So first, what I'll show is I'll click on tables here. So if you wanted to even just give this a shot, it is really pretty straightforward just to migrate that SharePoint list or clone that SharePoint list over to a dataverse table. Nothing too complex there. You can actually just clone the whole thing directly over. So what I'll show first is actually doing that approach. So under tables here, I'll say create with SharePoint list. It says it's in preview. I believe it's been here maybe long enough that most people will see it, but just keep in mind if you don't see it there, that maybe eventually it'll roll out for you. But I'll click that create with SharePoint list. And so what it'll do is it'll just open up, let me choose which list that I want to, move and create a table out of. So I'll just choose my personal site, and I'll choose a list on my personal site. Just kind of go through this little process here quickly, but so it's just showing here now where the data is coming from, my new list, and it's actually right now generating all the columns and importing the data for me. So makes it pretty straightforward just to get the ball rolling and to try it out. So I can see it brought over my different fields already. So let's say, okay, yeah, I'll just keep it as is. There's different things you could do for tweaking this right here, but for now, maybe I just want to say save and exit. So what I did is I, just imported a SharePoint list into a Dataverse table. So now I could use it in Power Apps. And so you could do that, and it'll bring in all the actual records as well. So all the individual items that are in that list, and it could be thousands of items. And I've tested it with thousands of items as well. This is one approach: is I could first create this table, and once it saves, I could come back to, maybe if you're someone who can play around with Power Apps, I could now, try to add one of my Dataverse tables. I've already got some added here, but I could come in here and, it'll have that little Dataverse icon. So I could add some of these different ones in just to give it a shot and play around with those queries like I was doing here, or creating something that's delegated, to see if that functionality, to see if what you're doing maybe currently on your SharePoint list, just apply it to a Dataverse table and see how the performance is, see if you're getting the desired experience there. And one other thing that's pretty nice as well, actually, is it could be a whole other topic in of itself. I won't get into it, but there's a lot of little nice features that for Dataverse tables that tie in with Power Apps. Like you can create pre-filtered views, formatted views, things like that can be used on the fly. So, I could actually, set up views. For instance, I set up one for the Brazil locations of this table. And so I can just use this pre-filtered view in my Power Apps, without having to do those expressions and things like that inside of Power Apps. You could just select this view. So however you set it up, whatever you've done filter wise, I could just come over here and change my filters, add additional ones. And then it's, I could just manage it from here, this view from here. So if it's used in different screens, whatever in your Power Apps, you could just have this view to manage. So that's one of those nice features to be aware of. So anyways, yeah, now I could come back. I just added a new Dataverse table. I've already got some here, but I'll just click one just to show you, once you've added it, whatever name it has, you could just add it as a data source and then start to play around with it. So for instance, I just added this one here, the attendees. So of course, it would just be a matter of me if I wanted to start trying to play around with it to add that attendee sign, add that data source attendee signups. And then any views that I have, you could see I could actually select the views here. It creates ones by default, but if I created custom ones, I could have it pre-filtered to whatever my view was set up, whatever you have set up on your view, and use that as the data source. So it's pretty nice to be aware of. So that's one side. I'm just showing, go ahead, move that data to a data, move your SharePoint data from a list or library into a Dataverse table, play around with it. And now let's just show actually syncing the data using the data flows. I'll just show that real quick. So what I'll do is I'll come over to the data flows tab. And so I've got a couple running already in my environment, but I can just walk through a couple little things here that you could try out if you wanted to sync it. So I'll hit the new data flow. I'll just say it's going to be a new test for now, just because it's something I'm going to delete. Just hit create, and you'll see actually, you could potentially choose a lot of data sources. You could do all kinds of things here, advanced stuff. What I'm going to show though is, the use case of using SharePoint Online. So I could click SharePoint online list here and set it up, but I've already got, my site as an option here. So I'm going to choose my recent option here. I could just click that SharePoint on list and set it up from there. But basically what it's doing is it's letting me choose any list or library from the site I selected. So I selected my site. So these are all the different, lists and so on that I've got that I could pull into my Dataverse table. So I'll go ahead and let's select. Yeah, I'll do we can choose locations. I'll just show you real quick. I could check this. You could also check multiple, get a little more complex there. But basically what it's showing here is, what do you actually want to sync to Dataverse? So it's showing all the system fields. So, what I'd recommend if you're trying this out, I'll try to not go too in depth here, but, basically, oh yeah. So I'll choose this data source. We'll say transform data. And then there's a lot you could do here, but just to give you the idea, what I would recommend if you're just wanting to try this out real quick is remove all the columns that you don't, remove what you don't need. Just leave one ID column. So I'll remove this ID column. I'll remove some of this stuff because let's say this is just the locations dropdown. I don't need a bunch of additional, system metadata that's coming from SharePoint. Maybe depending on what you're wanting to use this for, you do want to include that stuff. But let's just say, realistically, I just need the locations. I'll also leave the GUID there. But I just want to show, I'm just going in, I'm just hitting the delete button on the columns that I don't need. But yeah, once again, this could get pretty advanced in terms of, the different kind of things that you could do here for actually formatting the data. And also, you notice any action I take is saved here as almost like a version history of all your actions that you could roll back. There's something to keep in mind as well. So, I just cleaned it up. So now I've just got my locations, the ID, and I just left that GUID column as well. And I'll even just change this. Something that I usually do is change this to a text field, just be a normal text field. And I'll just hit next. And basically, this is the other piece I just want to show, which is you could choose to just go ahead and create a new table from scratch and map it out. Or if you already created a table, like I was doing a second ago, then you can load to an existing table. So for instance, just to walk through this again, I have a locations table I already created. So if I wanted to go ahead and start syncing, I would just grab my locations table and let's find the name. It's got a little prefix on it. So I've got to remember the name of it there. Locations. Yeah, here we go. So the locations and the sign up, it's fine. May have given it an actual name location, sorry. anyways, yeah, it doesn't, there's a bunch of tables here, so yeah, I'm having to peruse through them. But I could also just create a new one for the sake of the demo. Yeah, we'll just create a new one. It's just to not take up time. So I'll just say load to new table. And just show here. So, it just offers some auto-generated mapping of fields for my new table, which is one is for the GUID, for the ID, for the title field. And so basically the idea is you're just creating a mapping from your SharePoint list to your new table. And once you get through setting it up, so I've just set up the mapping, it accepted it, that's good. So now I can choose to refresh automatically. So this is the final step I just wanted to show. So I'm actually going through right now, syncing data from SharePoint to a dataverse table. I can just choose how often I want that data to sync, whether I want it to be manual or I want it to, happen every day, every hour, week, month, however often you want to sync it. I think the minimal amount that you can sync is 30 minutes. Like going to sync it every 30 minutes. Let's just say I'm good for, every hour, or once a day. It's fine enough. And I just choose when I want to do that, or just certain days of the week. You can do that as well. And then also you can get this if you just want to get an email notification if it fails. So just something to keep in mind there. Some of those settings of how often you want it to refresh and if you want to get a notification if for some reason it failed. But I could hit publish and then that'll actually start to sync. So I just walked through, actually just now, I just from scratch, in the data flows, created the table and synced the SharePoint data there. So you can actually do it pretty fast just by coming here. If you want to start out syncing, the other approach is you could start first by, creating the table using that method at the beginning and then create a sync later on if you want. So, there's just kind of two different approaches to get up and running there. If one approach, maybe you even just want to switch it to the dataverse table and not use the list anymore if it's something like locations, but it's up for you to decide. Now, of course, this is really nice because of what it'll afford you to be able to do with the data in your Power App. But of course, there's going to be just that discussion of the cost. So, if I wanted to be able to share this app that I've created here, which is using a premium feature, I would need to have a paid Power Apps license to, publish it and share it with others. And my understanding now too is there's at least some level of cost for the end users who would be using the app as well, which could be a $5 cost per user, I believe. Now it depends on what other licenses you have for your users, if they already have what they need, but I think you could be looking at that. So that's where, how important would this app be and to use this functionality and, weighing out those costs versus maybe taking some of these other strategies first, and whether or not you've exhausted them. But there is an option to make a scalable solution and work with really large amounts of data with what we're talking about with the dataverse tables and the data flows. So with that in mind, I will hand this back over and that will conclude my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. You did fantastic. Guys, I know it seems a little complex if you're not maybe on the technical side, but the true ability to pull and push data without losing any data or have any data loss in the process is a superpower, especially as you guys continue to grow in your organization. A couple of use cases just for you guys to think about. If you have a purchase order form and maybe that form has a lot of products on the list that require complex filtering, or maybe you have an approval dashboard where multiple person assigned to fields contain the current user, maybe even the acknowledgement dashboard where you need to roll up documents or requests that a user is required to acknowledge based off of a job title. As you guys continue to grow and need to scale that information, this is definitely a great solution there. So thank you so much, Dylan, and thank you all presenters today. You guys did fantastic. With that said, that does conclude today's learning portion of today's webinar. I hope we've been able to spark some new interest for functionality for you and your teams to explore. Please be on the lookout in your email for the next webinar, which will be on May 15th. We look forward to learning with you again. Before we segue into our live Q&A section of the webinar, again, we want to open it up for all kinds of questions today. I just want to remind everyone that all of the webinar notes, slides, and recordings will be found on our learning portal for easy access for everything discussed today. For our SharePoint support clients. If for some reason you don't have access or would like to gain access to this learning portal, please just reach out to us after the webinar. Our learning portal is the singular place that you can go for you and your team to get all of the materials from not just today's webinar, but any future webinar recordings and materials as well. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and segue into our live Q&A forum. If you don't plan on staying for the live Q&A, I want to say thank you again for learning with us today. On the screen, we are showing instructions on how to raise your hand to ask questions to one of our presenters. Your mic will be unmuted and questions will be taken in order of hand raise. I do want to have a friendly reminder that we can, on this live Q&A, ask anything you'd like about SharePoint or the 365 environment. No questions are too small, and there's no such thing as a bad question. So feel free to raise your hand, and we'd love to talk to you. I feel like we should have some outro music playing right now.
Could you do a little beatbox for us? Maybe we could do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Looks like we have a question in the chat. If my site has, it's a lot of zeros, 500,000 items, would using the File Explorer option not be a good choice due to the potential syncing issues? That's a great question. I'm going to let one of the dev teams answer that.
Yeah, there's a sync limit of around 300,000 that will cause sync to effectively break. So, our recommendation for breaking things into smaller chunks in terms of multiple libraries is often driven by that kind of technical wall, if you will. If you're having a need to use the File Explorer, add shortcut to OneDrive feature.
Yeah, there's also a good debate happening right now on whether or not syncing is going to end up being retired, only because syncing's primary use case was, working offline, always having documents with you. In today's world with 5G everywhere, shortcuts, having a singular source of truth document that doesn't have to sync together seems to be a better solution for not just your local machine and the storage on that, but any version histories and duplications. A lot of things can happen with syncing. So, but great question. That was awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? We got plenty of time today, so feel free to either put it in chat if you don't feel comfortable asking in the mic, or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Will we ever be able to drag and drop from SharePoint Online to desktop Outlook? I'm not 100% sure what Microsoft has up their sleeves, but there are some functionalities like that that are definitely nice to have, and hopefully Microsoft starts rolling those out. I haven't heard of anything like that, but I'll let the dev team answer if they have heard anything on any features of that nature. A few more minutes, see if anyone has any more questions. Those are two great questions, by the way. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leanna. All right. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Oh, wait, hold on. What's the difference between semantic model and dataverse tables? That's perfect for Dylan.
I think, yeah, if I follow with the semantic model. So, I mean, a lot of times the semantic models usually would refer to like the semantic, I imagine the semantic indexing of files, files or content, so that you can create, whether it's for Copilot or search, to create sort of words that can be answered. Essentially, there's some kind of indexing that's happening that's allowing, a user to search or ask for a file or a bit of content in a plain language type of way, as opposed to having to know like maybe an exact metadata tag or something like that, or whatever for that content. So Dataverse tables is, at least in what we're talking about for today, yeah, the Dataverse tables, it's, a way to, yes, manage data. It's just a separate way to manage data. It's also used for all kinds of other things. So some of that data that's used for some of the AI and processing and all of that, maybe that indexing is also stored in Dataverse. So Dataverse is used for more than just Power Apps. So it's a kind of a whole, way of where a lot of data is hosted. A lot of the Copilot stuff and all that is also hosted and stored. The conversations and stuff is hosted in Dataverse. So there is some tie between them, but Dataverse is more of like just sort of that hosting of data itself, where maybe that what you might be referring to, the semantic model, is, a particular function that may be using Dataverse.
Right. Good answer there. All right. Give them maybe 60 more seconds, see if anyone has any other questions or thoughts. All right. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Thanks for learning with us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next month.